Well, one man who knows all about this and has actually been very vocal about the need for a national fleet or an Australian flagged fleet is Dr. Stuart Ballantyne. He joins me now. Stuart, welcome to Inside the News. You would have seen this today, 12 new ships to make Australia secure. What do you make of that?
Well, good evening, Cory, and Happy New Year to you. I love hearing politicians talking a lot of ship. And it's nice to hear them talking positively about the merchant navy fleet that we don't have.
Yeah, but we've talked before, Stuart, about dual flag carriers that they could be Australian ships or Australian flag ships, but they could also have the tax benefits or the crew benefits of working overseas, but it would give us the power to recall them in times of crisis. Isn't that what Albanese is suggesting here?
Yes, it is partly, and it's certainly a good idea to have merchant ships suitable for what they call dormant charters. So in other words, they could be flagged into emergency response or defense activities at short notice. But actually, we don't have any vessels on the coast at the moment that are suitable for that quick conversion by the defense forces.
Yeah, okay, so there may be merit to this, but you know, another point that you've made over the years, and I've followed your musings and your expertise in this space, is that you can have all the ships in the world, but if you're not in control of your ports, and if you don't have enough ports, you know, in critical areas, it's not going to make much difference. Australia's got a deficiency in seaports, doesn't it?
That's absolutely it. We have a deficiency in ships. And we really need about 200 ships for a nation of this size. We need about 200 ships. 50 of those would be overseas ships, and the other 150 would be domestic. But we need ports, and we actually need the ports first. But the problem with that is that we have already enshrined all of the coast with national parks, sensitive fish habitats, sensitive ecology, et cetera, So to get a port approved, even a small one like we've done recently in South Australia, takes years and years to get through EPA and the EPBC.
And yet, if we did have greater port infrastructure, and I see what you're saying about green tape, it's crazy and it's out of control. But if we did have port infrastructure, we could, I presume, cost effectively transport a lot of goods around Australia, taking a lot of traffic off our roads. It would probably be more efficient, I'm guessing that, but also strategically it would be very, very valuable over the long term for crises such as we've seen the last couple of years, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We've been pushing, the industry has been pushing very hard for a coastal highway, motorways of the sea, similar to what they've done in Europe. And you would need at least 12 to 15 large coastal roll-on, roll-off ships that would do this task, but encircling the whole nation and getting the trucks off the road, reducing the road accidents, the road deaths, the emissions, the congestion. This affects every Australian. And the cost of all of those road issues is around $50 billion a year, which certainly would help in getting a coastal fleet up and running.
Yeah, 50 billion, it's not chump change, but I suggest it's a long way from what needs to be spent in the area about what you're talking. Let's go back to Anthony Albanese for a second though. Is a government investing in a fleet of 12 ships like this a good idea, or should they back out and remove the green tape, the red tape, to allow the market to develop these port facilities and to invest in the infrastructure and the ships that could be available then to the government when needed?
That's a good question. I think they have to do both at once. I think they have to remove the green tape, especially around the coast, to make the ports happen. In the great state of Queensland, I'll give you an example that we have only 10 trading ports in 7,000 kilometres of coastline. So that's one every 700 kilometres. Now in Gujarat in India, they have a port every 53 kilometres. In UK, they have a port every 65 kilometers. So that's roughly 12 times the amount of ports per unit of coastline. And it shows you how we're stifling our regional growth. We're stifling the trapped resources that are in the center of this country and remote areas. So we should be paying good attention to this at the same time as refleeting.
Okay, so while Albanese's response today is probably not large enough or broad enough for what the sea transport industry is really looking for, he's on the right track to actually have a shot at the government. I mean, this is not an original thought. You've been pushing this for a very long time. Even some of his own backbenchers have been doing it. What would the shipping industry now want to see from the Prime Minister in response to Albanese's front running?
Look, I think the industry doesn't care who's in there, but as long as they make positive moves towards the industry, because the industry at the moment is just staggers from crisis to crisis. We don't have good enough infrastructures. We don't have enough coastal vessels, and we should be tackling these with incentives, tax incentives, fuel, duty-free fuel, all sorts of good things like that that will incentivize the industry. But what Mr. Albanese or Mr. Scott Morrison must do is get some people around them that actually know what they're talking about. We see, reams and reams of these so-called shipping advisors and transport policy advisors who have never seen a ship. I've got no idea about a ship or the shipping industry. And it's comical in a way, but these guys are in charge of the policy and they shouldn't be. So I would recommend to whoever becomes the next Prime Minister, get some good people around you.
Yeah, Stuart, I've seen it firsthand. The advisors are fresh out of university. They know all the theory about it, but none of the practicalities. Can I just finish on this, though, Stuart? Access to containers seems to be a huge problem for industry now. I talked before in my opening about the price of them have gone from a couple of $1,000s when I actually bought one to store some things in to now over $13,000. How critical is container supply to the shipping industry? And does Australia need a strategic reserve of containers?
No, not really. It's a symptom of the ailments of the shipping industry. Today it's containers, tomorrow it'll be fuel. If you're thinking about the cost of containers to go from here to Japan, which used to be $3,000, now it might be $11,000, to get a container from Brisbane to the Torres Strait Islands, for instance, is $15,000. To get a container from Brisbane to Norfolk Island is $24,000. So we have to keep a little bit of perspective when the big shipping companies say, oh, the price has gone up to $10,000. And I think we should be looking at our own backyard first and looking after our South Pacific neighbors and our territories and doing things that they deserve to be looked at.
And that's where more ports, more competition, more ships will benefit Australia and our neighbours and lower the freight costs for all of us. Dr. Stuart Ballantyne, Chairman of Sea Transport, thanks so much for your time tonight and all the best for 2022.
Thank you, Cory.